Thank you all for coming. When I learned that it was the 45th anniversary of Title IX, I felt like I was compelled to share other people's stories around that historic moment. And in my circle alone, I have 4 amazing people who have a lot of experience with that. So first things first, I just want to go over some information about what Title IX is. I assume you know because you're here, but it never hurts to go over it. So June 23rd, 1972, Title IX came into law. It's a really complex law in application, but we're going to focus mostly on its application in sports. So the law states, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So what does this mean? Essentially, after the law was passed, we found that many more women started competing in sport because they had the opportunity. Before Title IX, 1 in 27 girls played sports. That number today is now 2 in 5. Since 1972, thanks to increased funding and institutional opportunities, there's been a 545% increase in the percentage of women playing college sports and a 990% increase in the percentage of women playing high school sport. So obviously, incredible statistics. All of us in the room are a product of that. There's still a long way to go as it relates to women of color and other marginalized communities. But I want to start the actual program not by reading your bios, because you guys all read that in the Eventbrite, I'm sure. So having you each just introduce yourselves and what brought you to the panel.
Hi, I'm Dennis Cranston. I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Russia, so I'm like, I guess, part of the marginalized immigrant community in a way. I came to the United States as an athlete, a student athlete in '92. Ran track in South Carolina. I was directly affected by Title IX. Our cross-country program got canceled, and with that, the distance program fell apart. And so I was forced into the dungeons of fraternity life for a couple of years, and then actually chose an entirely different career, switching from pre-med into business development and finance. So there's several aspects to my life that were affected by Title IX, but none as important as I now have a 1-year-old daughter, and so that brings everything full circle and puts things in perspective, and I look forward to the opportunities that will be available to her because of the brave women going all the way back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, and definitely to my fellow panelists and people that we all know in track and field who are trailblazers out there all the way.
I'm Cami. I have a weird microphone. I'm Cami Anderson, and I've been sort of a serial CEO of big education and social justice organizations in my day job, but I'm a sort of quiet sports enthusiast in my not day job, but I have been for my whole life. Allison fan and fellow Worldwide. What brought me to this panel is, we'll talk, I think, assume more at length, but the upshot is that while Title IX was passed in 1972, a lot of things happened in the early 90s. A lot of precedent cases were set all over the country, and so a lot of things started to happen. And I was in college at that time, old, and was part of a group of women, a diverse group of women across the University of California at Berkeley, which is where I went. And so that becomes relevant, right? Because we think of Berkeley as being like the bastion of like liberal values, and not so much. So we actually put together a sort of a very long dossier with lots of citations alleging Title IX transgressions, and sent it to God and the world. We decided not to go the lawsuit route for various reasons, although we kept that in our back pocket. A lot of craziness ensued, which we'll probably talk about, and it was sort of epic and very public, and one of my first lessons in sort of fighting power. But as a result of our efforts, the whole entire UC system made radical changes, and I also learned some interesting things along the way.
Okay, my name is John Hunterkamp, and I'm also an Allison fan. And I guess what brought me to this panel is I was fortunate enough to receive a athletic scholarship to St. John's University, so I really reaped the rewards of funding and going to school on the dollar of a lot of other folks that were just paying tuition. In that line, in 2002, St. John's University, where I went, dropped several programs, and there was a Title IX component to that, and so I was affected in that way as an alumnus, and kind of trying to stick up for the current student body that programs were canceled, and uniquely enough, football was actually canceled, football is usually kind of a big topic when it comes to equity and especially with funds. And then also, I went back to St. John's and coached their women's cross-country and track and field team, so I was involved with kind of the post-cutting of the men's team, with just two unique things, in particular with track and field and cross-country, that affect the Title IX are different, I think, for running. Since we're here in the NYR Run Center, I'll probably get into that a little bit later, but a few unique things about running with Title IX that I saw as a coach and also as an alumnus. So hopefully I can contribute to different perspectives on the panel and help educate and also be educated.
I'm Casey, also a fan of Allison sometimes. I'm here for a couple of reasons. One, I was one of the first wave of female athletes who grew up. Like, when I was younger, I started the soccer team at my high school. We didn't have a soccer team, and I was one of the girls who started the team. And I played collegiately on programs that hadn't existed 10 or 20 years before. And so I told Allison, I very strongly know I was not good enough to play D1 sports. I 100% know I played D3. That if it weren't for Title IX, I wouldn't have been able to play collegiate sports. It would not have happened. I was not good enough to make that cut. And two-prong, I also work in college athletics. I got my master's degree in sports management. I took a whole class on Title IX. I brought the textbook because and I'm now an assistant athletic director at LU Brooklyn, a Division I school. And so I'm one of 4, 5, or 6 administrators tasked with living with this law day to day and sort of working with it in our athletic departments, mostly indirectly, but it is a part of what I do every single day. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. I wanted to bring in a bit of the timeline so that we can fully understand the last, as Dennis refers to, the 50s and 60s, what the climate was like before Title IX. Just for reference, 1960 was when women were allowed to participate in 5 running events in the Summer Olympics, including the 800 meters, which had been banned after the 1928 race because of questions as to whether the 800 was too taxing for female athletes. 1967, this is actually the photo that we recently recreated. Catherine Switzer is the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. There's that famous moment where the race official tries to pull her off the course. 1972, of course, Title IX is passed, but as Cami mentioned, the laws didn't really go into effect and application until years later. 1977, amazing fact, this was the year of the sports bra. We have sports bra squad in the building, but 1977, the year that the sports bra was invented, and it was actually just 2 jock straps tied together. 1984, that was the first women's Olympic marathon at the Summer Games in Los Angeles. 1992, the Black Women in Sports Foundation was created. So I just, going through that timeline, Cami, I wanted to now turn to you and give us a sense of what things were like on your campus in the 70s in the context of this climate.
Not the 70s, I'm not that old. Well, I was
90s.
born, I was born, I guess, the year before Title IX went into effect. But when I got to Cal, so I played soccer, I was a swimmer, I was a basketball player, and I was lucky in my high school we actually had a fairly robust set of sports programs for girls and boys, although, we all certainly faced the stigma. Even though we could play, there was a lot of talk about whether or not that was the girly thing to do, and doing that in high school was a little rough. I'm sure people in this audience can relate. But when I got to Cal, I ended up rowing, which is a long story, mostly because the soccer team was in turmoil, and the crew coach saw me in the weight room and then told me I was too short, and I said, see you at practice, which is the only reason why I ended up rowing for 4 years. But what happened for Crew, one of the unsettled issues in Title IX was the philanthropic funds and lots of things around. So there were two big things about cash. One was Dean Witter wrote at Cal, and everyone kept telling me, oh, that's privately funded and it's endowed and whatever. And two, we had these huge sports programs, Cal football, Cal basketball. I mean, you know, Jason Kidd, they're big time sports things. So this was the riff. And so when we would drive in, you know, borrowed car, my uncle's 1972 station wagon with the paneling on the side, you know, the wood things, you know, we would actually take that sucker and cram our entire 8 and drive like all night to get to Portland and then sleep on the floor of alumni houses. And then we would use one boat where we would switch back and forth between the JV and the varsity 8 because it was the only one aerodynamic enough. Because in Crew, like every second matters, right? So this is what happened year after year, and we would see the men, you know, like getting off in their suits from like, United Flight 244, headed to the Hyatt, and we were just told like this is normal, and this was happening in the women's swimming team, which is like tons of Olympic, like top-notch people. This Cal. And what was so fascinating to me is how much everyone bought the narrative, like the philanthropic funding, the fact that the men's sports made so much more money, like all that actually turned out to not totally be true. Even if it was still breaking the law. So this all kind of built up over time, and finally in my senior year, the head seat of the varsity 8 was 6'2". She wanted to row in the Olympics. I am not. And so in one race we had too close of a turnaround, so I flipped in after her. I didn't have time to re-rig my oar. And I just wrecked my back and I was out for 3 months. And as I was like recovering and almost missing out on my last season, I got good and pissed and did a lot of reading about Title IX. And so as a result, discovered lots of things that people on this panel I'm sure will educate us about. Precedent cases were being set all over the country about the definition of equity, about whether or not it even mattered where the money came from, but that it had to be upheld regardless of how much other sports made, regardless of philanthropic endowment, the good faith effort to have equality of offerings, all this stuff was happening. In 92, literally, there were like 5 huge cases. So we dropped this letter on the university and craziness ensued. But leading up to that, I guess the thing that I found most shocking, and I'm not sure if other people, was how the gross and overt and in-your-face inequities across sports for our sort of lesser sport of Crew and like for big sports like swimming were completely and 100% accepted by men and women, athletes, coaches, donors, and everybody's like, yep, that's just how it is. Like the men make more money, the men are more interested in sports, and philanthropy follows the dudes. So like, suck it up. And that was completely accepted, even though Title IX had been signed 21 years prior. And it wasn't until the early 90s where a series of cases, including a Supreme Court case, challenged those conventional wisdoms in very formal ways. But people absolutely drink that water at University of California, Berkeley. Absolutely.
I think, Casey, you can speak to this. I know you recently read a 60-page report that came out on the status of Title IX in its 45th anniversary. And if you could tell us a little bit about those numbers that Cami mentioned, that the numbers, the story that people were telling didn't fit what the numbers were actually telling about men and women's participation.
Yeah, well, there's the NCAA every 4 or 5 years does. The NCAA loves to do reports. They do reports on everything. I could tell you about volleyball marketing. They did a 20-page report on that last year. But so they sent one actually on last week, a 60-page report on Title IX and kind of where it stands. And the summary of the report was essentially, we're not there. Female athletes make up 45% of college athletes, which is still not 50. It's not evenly split. And men are still getting about 60% of the funding. Like, it's still not there. This is all disclaimer. Everything I say in terms of this is just men and women. It gets worse if you talk about minority women. Like, for example, I'm an assistant athletic director, and I have been saying to actually some of my friends here, it used to be a really undiverse industry. It used to be, and now there are more women. I'm not the only one. I'm not, being harassed at work. I'm not a minority anymore. But I looked at this number from the report that came out on Thursday, and of all of the over 1,000 NCAA schools, 32% of the people who hold my position are women. So it's still 68% male. My position, I'm not an athletic director. And of that percentage, it's 93% white. So tiny, tiny percent. It's statistics like 23% of athletic directors, head coaches, and conference commissioners are women. Right, today. That's today. This is 45 years later. So there have been a lot of amazing things. Like when the law was passed, 2% of athletic funding went to women. So, 45% is an increase, and that's awesome, but we're not there yet. And I did bring extra copies of that report. It breaks it down by all the different schools that sponsor championship football versus non-championship football versus schools that don't have football. And I think one of the most staggering misunderstandings about college athletics is that it's a profitable industry. People assume that it is. 6% of all NCAA athletic programs make a profit.
Wow.
That's it. That's like 10. And you guys could probably name them along with me. It's Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, probably Clemson, Notre Dame. Yeah, and that's it. The rest of us are all operating in the red all the time. So it's not a for-profit business. Everything we're doing is being put back into the athletes, but it's still not being put back in the same amount of funding. One of the numbers I quoted for John when we were working out the other day was, and this is, so the interesting thing about, I don't even know if this is answering the question, I'm just off topic, I'm going. Is that Title IX has had amazing implications, it's had a lot of consequences. One of the things it's doing is pitting the have-nots against each other. So the non-revenue men's sports, track and tennis and swimming and wrestling and gymnastics, against the women's sports, while football and basketball, which are the haves, are just cruising and not being affected by this at all. So for example, the one that stuck with me in all of the research I did preparing for this was in 2006, Rutgers cut their men's tennis program. So this is a direct example of how it's not the women's sports that are doing this. So Rutgers cut their men's tennis program, which their annual budget was $175,000. That year, Rutgers spent $175,000 on hotel rooms for the football team for home games.
What?
So the money that's getting cut from the men is not going to the women, it's going to football and basketball. So that's one of the main things, it's one of the misconceptions, the myth that Title IX is the reason that this is happening. It's not. It's because administrators and college presidents and athletic directors are deciding that football and basketball are what drive. While they're not profitable sports, they do drive enrollment and publicity, and it's a machine. You guys know the beast of college football. You've seen it, and you hear the numbers, and you hear about the athletes wanting to get paid. You have heard that. It's not the athletic department's making the money, So it's much more, and that's sort of what all of the research I've done when I, got my graduate degree 12 years ago, and then now, is that it's being implemented still to this day incorrectly.
John, I want to get your response to that. I know you guys have had conversations about this previously, and obviously there were unintended consequences of Title IX, and Casey, I think you did a great job of showing us how that's not, it's the haves and then the have-nots working against each other, but that has very real and personal implications for you as an athlete. So if you could speak to that a little, John.
Yeah, so there's oftentimes you hear, oh, Title IX is killing men's sports, and it's really the implementation of it by universities, and there's definitely budget implications. But for St. John's, for example, and I'll pick on them, and I was very vocal in 2002 when they announced in December, during finals for the student athletes, it got out that they were canceling men and women's swimming, men's track and field cross country, men's football, bringing back men's lacrosse to fit this puzzle, maybe because at the time, the St. John's Athletic Department was 70% male, and the school population was 57% female. So that was like the main reason they gave, and so they're hiding behind Title IX when this law was passed in 1972. 30 years later, they decided to get compliant, and they did it in a way that was not so thoughtful, and instead of looking for other ways to get a higher budget, and also with the cutting of the teams, actually I think by cutting men's programs, you're actually losing women's spots. So if you think just quick, easy math, say there's 100 student athletes at St. John's, 70 are male and 30 are women. You have to, okay, how about instead of keeping the 70 men and bringing the women up to 80 to kind of make it equivalent to the 57% versus bringing it down, cutting the men's programs and then making it equity that way. So now the women are only getting 57 spots versus the 80. I know there's budget implications with scholarships and different things, but I just thought it was a very, maybe when the law was passed originally, there was a lot of guidance because it was new, that was part of it, but also the universities, if they have to build a library or a student center, they plan for it, they have budgets, they have donors, there's ways of trying to figure out a solution versus, oh, we have to be compliant, we should have done this 25 years ago, let's do it by next year. And if they are going to cut the men's programs, at the very least, okay, in 2002, say we're going to cancel these programs in 2006. So the junior on the women's swimming team in this case, or the men's football team, or men's track and field, doesn't have to decide between staying at the university and not competing, or as a junior, having to leave all their friends and their coaches to find another solution to play, to compete in their final year of eligibility, I think. And then one of the stats that I read in the report that Casey was talking about is, since 1988, there's been 803 women's programs introduced, which is great, and 330 men's programs cut. So it's probably a better way of doing things as far as, what's that?
That's not totally. That's only at Division 1.
Division 1. So
Division 2 and Division 3 have actually added 800 men's programs.
Okay, so for Division 1 was definitely that stat, but it's one of these things where you could there's ways of being compliant versus hiding behind Title IX and then Title IX getting a bad rap, because obviously Title IX, I just think of someone that was a recruiter, even coaches were recruiting athletes that whole fall and all summer just to be notified that, oh, by the way, we don't have a program, you don't have a job, and these athletes don't have a spot. And that's, I think, shame on the university in this case, versus their politics, is there's ways of trying to implement it and finding ways to be compliant and whatnot, but that's just the kind of story that was personal. I was lucky enough to have, graduate in 98 because I'm a little bit older, but in 2002, the whole team, a bunch of programs were affected. I just thought that it was implemented way too quickly when they had way more time to figure out solutions. So, and that speaks to that a little bit.
Can I say one quick thing about what happened as far as how it was implemented at Cal? Because on the one hand, I think it was a little bit better, although highly imperfect, and I do have a bit of a reaction to the wait. I'll start quoting Martin Luther King, but I might, because there were lots of women who waited for a really long time too, and it's just like 20 years before we really implemented. So we pushed. When I dropped my letter, I was like, no, we're not. I got all these same arguments from all the higher ups about how it was going to take 5 years, and the men were going to suffer. And our point was threefold. Number one, we're already suffering. Like I literally almost permanently injured my back as a result of what was just appalling lack of resources. Number two, there were generations of women who were every bit as dedicated and as good as the men, who were in jeopardy of losing something that they thought they were due. And number three, sometimes when there's a mandate from the courts, however imperfect, you have to just do it and fix it on the back end, or else things never change. So the way Cal did it, which wasn't perfect, but I was one of the people saying, like, a 5-year implementation plan is not acceptable. What they did do, and we got involved in some of our coalition was vocal. We didn't have a lawsuit, so that I think helped and hurt us, right? They thought we were serious because we'd CC the press and God in the world, and it got out far and wide, so they knew we weren't playing. But we also did get involved in some of the implementation conversations, and so what they did was they held harmless the football and basketball, which, all right, wasn't perfect, but we weren't going to win that battle, but they certainly didn't add money, like that was part of the negotiations. Then they sort of took all the other budgets, crew, swimming, they didn't cut anything, but they basically named a head coach, gave them the whole pot, and said, make it work and make sure it's equitable. So, for example, our sport crew, we were lifting weights in a totally unsanitary basement with disgusting rusted stuff. I mean, it was horrible. Someone got tetanus and had to be in the hospital for 3 months. As an example, the crew coach, who complained and was salty and a total jerk about it, But what happened was we combined our weight rooms and we just created a schedule, so we were in the state-of-the-art, like the awesome men's weight room, but at least we weren't getting tetanus. And they were salty and like pissed off because they didn't like us to be in there, but nobody got cut, no one, they didn't like to have to share their weight room with us, but like, too bad, so sad was my attitude. So I actually just like want to push back a little bit. Like clearly I don't think cutting programs is like awesome, nor cutting seats for anyone, because everyone loses. But I also just like the whole, civil rights laws are always messy and imperfect, and equity sometimes does feel like a zero-sum game, doesn't mean we shouldn't fight for it. And I actually think Cal did a sort of decent job, in part because those of us who were on coalition pushing didn't accept the just wait for a 5-year plan because people might be uncomfortable.
No, I think that's important. I think with all these laws and everything that's going on in the world right now, what we see is the imperfections in it and people who are told to wait. But obviously those are the people who've been waiting, right? So they're pushing for more. Dennis, I wanted to ask the same question because I know that for you it sort of completely changed your career trajectory and your life. But you've then found your connection again supporting a lot of female athletes. So I wanted you to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of came around and came full circle. So I was a pre-med major at South Carolina when this happened. With the loss of the cross country and men's track and field program, a lot of free time on my hands, and I started exploring different other aspects of college life. One of it was to go out and get summer jobs with various sports media organizations, and through that I kind of got more interested in pursuing a career in sports. And started out in sports media, covering the So on the '94 Goodwill Games and the '96 Atlanta Olympics, which was convenient because I was in South Carolina already, and got involved both with the athletic department because it was still a big piece of my life, big part of my life that was missing because I was no longer going to practice twice a day, but the female athletes were the track and field, the cross country athletes were. And so found that connection and got involved with USA Track and Field. I'm now involved with New York Athletic Club, where I'm a member. There are a lot of stellar young female athletes there that need the support. One aspect of the entire collegiate athlete career that to me always struck me as having a bit of a disbalance is the emphasis on not just going to class, but pursuing a career after sports, and that goes both for the student athletes and especially so for people who decide to pursue a full-time career in athletics after college, and then come out of it and that have very little to show for a track record, but are certainly entitled to the same opportunities as all of us are, the people who were able to have the luxury of paying a little bit more attention in class, who weren't as involved in travel, like cross country. We got in the van a couple of weeks, couple of months in the fall, and that was about it. And so we were lucky enough to be able to focus on our pursuit, following the academic pursuits. If you played softball, for instance, not so much. You're constantly on the road, and I feel like, and the athletic department really tried, but I felt like the big and with the professional athletes who I've met along the way of many years working around, and with the Olympics, with the various media outlets, with various sporting agencies, with New York Athletic Club. And supporting them with the advice and with the direction that a lot of times they're looking for in their professional pursuits, because that's something that I feel like both men and women are equally proud of, because they're just not getting access to the same kinds of opportunities that regular students are getting access to. So that to me that's extremely important. But also back to the point of pitting the have-nots versus the have-nots. I mean, it was between us and the swim team in '95 at South Carolina, and we had a lot of friends. It would have been personal. Of course, we would have, at the end of the day, we would have liked to come out on top and have swimming canceled. To be honest with you, but we're it's similar sports, cyclical sports. You're out there on your own as a swimmer or a runner. So would have felt the pain as well. one very constructive suggestion I had from my cross-country coach was to throw the athletic director in the swimming pool when I ran into swimming once. So that didn't quite pursue that, and probably would have been that effective. But joking aside, it is about creating opportunities both on the field and off the field. That is the focus here, and I feel like Title IX has done a lot in putting the young women on the field and giving them the first leg of the opportunity to get to college, to pursue an education. But I feel like that part that gets them to the next step of really leveraging that free education that a lot of times that gives them access to is still somewhat missing. In a lot of situations, the women that are given the opportunities, then the university still looks to leverage them for their own good. I went to South Carolina. We won the Final Four this past year, the women's Final Four. Big publicity stunt. I went back to Columbia for the track team reunion back in May. There are posters everywhere. What if these young women are going to do after college? The ones that go to WNBA, what are they going to do after they're done with their careers? That's a big question mark. That there's a lot of work bestowed upon us, the alumni, and the athletic departments, and trying to work together to figure it out.
That actually sort of wraps in a little bit to my next question for Casey. As an athlete in college, I think you said the first in your family to be able to pursue athletics in college. So I'm curious about your feelings about what's been called the female athlete paradox. So the idea is you're given this opportunity and now you can play, but yet and still there are all these conventions that women are supposed to uphold, right? So the battle between being an athlete and being feminine. And we can see that with Serena Williams, I think most recently and most publicly all the time, but where the public and people feel like they have the right to comment on her body and compare her to men and compare her to horses and everything else. So if you could tell us a little bit about what that experience was like for you as a college athlete, and maybe even today and still.
Sure. I mean, I was very much a tomboy, which again, that phrase in and of itself has issues. But yeah, I have vivid memories of trying to play sports with boys and not being allowed. And I was the best quarterback, and I wasn't allowed to play quarterback because they all wanted to play quarterback, and I thought they were better than I was. And I had to start the soccer team at my high school, and I mean, all of that. I mean, it was the early 2000s by the time I was in college, and it was better. But it was still, athletes were different from all the other girls on campus. There's still a noticeable divide. I didn't think I could do both, so I picked athlete, and I was put on eyeliner until I was 25. Like, I just was all in, like, I just want to be an athlete, so I'm going to be an athlete, and that's what I did.
Those days.
I
really miss those days.
Hey,
I want your job.
No, I was going to say, everyone says dress for the job you want, and I have a job where I can pursue things. So, I mean, I was never in the public eye, so it's not easy for me to speak to that, because nobody really cared what I wore or said or did. I was also not that good, so it didn't matter. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing. It's a thing that I see the athletes that I work with still to this day dealing with. I think they're way better equipped to handle it than I was. Like, I just kept like, ooh, and they have been growing up in this world where Serena Williams has been a role model for the freshmen coming in this year were born in 1999.
Goodness gracious.
Sorry. Welcome to my life. So that, Serena Williams was never not a thing for them. And like when I was growing up, it was Mia Hamm. That was it. She was the only one. And she was in college. She played at UNC, and she was my idol. And she was it. That was it. It was Mia Hamm. And then like those numbers grew as I got older. But when I was younger, like that was it. And so they are in a world where there's, just in tennis alone, there's Maria Sharapova, there's the Williams sisters, there's 90 different kinds of female athletes out there that they can look at and emulate. So I think it's getting better. It's definitely still a thing where I'm in charge, I do media relations for my day-to-day job, so I'm in charge of all the photographs, and it's still very much a thing. They come to me and ask to Photoshop out their cellulite when I put, images up on the website. And I'm like, dude, you look strong in this photo. I'm not photoshopping any part of your body. Like, it's stupid that you even have to ask me that. And these are Division I athletes who are on full scholarships and, really smart women, and it's still very much a thing for them. They wear makeup to games, and they worry about this stuff every single day. I've never had a male student athlete ask me to Photoshop a photo.
I just can say couple quick things. One, so I was 10 years before that, and on a positive side, particularly women's crew, any rowers here, like, these are serious, like, weightlifting, belching, like, pancake eating, like, people who were very serious about being strong and loving to be strong. And that, it was so empowering to be, like, in the van, comparing how many whatever pancakes you could eat, how many bench pulls you can do in 6 minutes. I mean, this was the culture in the women's crew team, and it was incredible to be in a van of 20 women where that was the conversation. So in a positive way, it was also like, crushing when you sort of got the feedback, like, oh, like, you guys actually dress up nice and you're not, and you like date men sometimes, which, what's the point? Irrelevant, but I mean, so, but anyway, the one on the positive side, right, there's something awesome, and what's great about that is, I was listening to the statistics about your profession, about women. Women make up 18% of the C-suite in all professions, like, 18% or 55% of the working age, and that includes female-dominated professions like social work, and publishing, and education, and so, like, we actually are not cracking the C-suite, like, anywhere near the percentage of population, but there's a really high correlation between women who play competitive sports and women who are in the C-suite. And I was actually part of a study a couple years ago, so for me, definitely experienced a lot of what you're saying, and just like, oh my gosh, I can tell you about the quarterback. That's funny. I had the same thing. But the flip side of that coin was just like, for me, it was like, I found home when I was on the crew team because I felt like for the first time, it was all about how strong you were and how persistent you were and how much you overcame like your best PR and whatever. And it was like amazing. And I can see why there's such a correlation between that and the C-suite, but like, let's not forget, this conversation is happening in context of a much bigger problem, which is that we don't like powerful women, period. Sports equals power, powerful women are problematic, they're anti-cultural, they're not great, and we have a huge problem with that, and it's ferreted out in the data that 18% has not budged for decades. So let's just keep that in the fore with this conversation.
I was gonna say, beyond the female athlete paradox you're talking about, day to day, people assume I'm an idiot in my profession. I get high-fived for knowing the basic rules of football. Like, I'm an assistant athletic director, it's my job to know that. I have 2 degrees in it, but I still get high-fived. This weekend, I also do stats for the Brooklyn Nets, and I was working the big professional 3v3 basketball tournament they had there. And they brought in a new software, which I learned in 24 hours. And successfully implemented, like badass, because I am. The guy who developed the software sat behind me the whole game and was in general amazed at how well I was handling it, but also was like, have you ever used a PC before? Do you hit Control C to copy if you want to just print, like, and I was like, dude, it's cool. And I was already stressed because I was learning a new software, and Allen Iverson's mom was coming up to me complaining about his stats. Like, I had my own thing going on, and he was like, do you need help with that? Can I teach you how to use a computer? And I was like, so it's still a thing all the time, every day. Like, I always have to. My old boss at Columbia was a female, and she was, obviously an assistant athletic director, and she said, it sucks, it's been so many years and it's getting so much better. You still have to be better than the guys every single day just to keep your job. And that is something, I said that to Kelly a few weeks ago, we were having a conversation about something similar. And that's something still to this day, like I can't just show up and do a good job. I have to do an amazing job. And even then, last 4 years, my male boss got the credit. Now I get the credit because I'm the boss, but it took 4 years of him getting all the credit and him getting promoted and going to a different school for me to get that. So it's still very much a thing that we're, in sports, we're not there yet. It's getting better for sure, and Title IX has done amazing things, but it's not there yet.
John, if I could ask you to speak to what it was like being a coach of female athletes, recognizing all of these tensions. What was your experience like, and how did you advocate for women and be a support through this?
Yeah, well, real quick, to the opposite of, sometimes you just have to show up if you're a guy. Our athletic director once was asking, I don't mean to pick on him, but I am going to pick on him. He was asking for our head coach, who was down by the triple jump. I said, "Oh, coach is down by the triple jump." He goes, "Is that how high you jump or how far you jump?" So he did not get a high five because he got a slap because he's the athletic director.
And he's an athletic director.
Yeah, he also was wearing the basketball team sweats that looked ridiculous, but different story. But to your actual question, there was a lot of kind of backlash on Title IX when your program gets dropped, especially if the university is using that as the main excuse. And so I was very vocal and wrote to the president at the time and the AD and said, especially bringing back some men's other sports and a puzzle that I needed to figure out. But then a couple years later, I took a job coaching the women at the same university. And I had a lot of alumni say, "How dare you give back to the school?" And they dropped our program. And I said, the young ladies that are on this team, or that I might recruit to be on this team, nothing to do with that. That's not their fault. I'm not going to coach them, someone else is going to coach them. Like, I'm happy, I want to coach, and I want to get back to my university. And so I wasn't pleased with how the university handled that situation, but at the same time, there was still, these women were, had the opportunity, and I was happy to be a part of that and to kind of help them grow and recruit folks to the program. And for being on the team, track and field and cross country is unique, as you know. That's the championships are combined. So if you go to the Big East Track and Field Championships or the SEC, there's the women's 800 and the men's 800. So I don't think a lot of people realize that because they go, this sport gets cut, and but it's different when half the meet is not relevant to you. So you're sitting there, and then during the men's 800, there's no one to root for. Also, on the coaching staff, I still understand why basketball teams, there's 12 athletes on the roster, there's 6 coaches. I don't understand how that, but with track and field, which is like 6 sports in one with jumps and sprints and throws, when you have combined programs, men and women, you could have 5 or 6 coaches. You could have a hurdle specialist, and a throw specialist, and a jumps, and a middle distance, and a distance. But when they cut the men's program, you obviously cut half the coaching staff. So now you'll have 3 coaches had to coach all those different concentrations. So those are the 2 things I talked about earlier or alluded to of specific to track and field is the fact that the championships are often combined and the meets are often combined, and you kind of, the women on my team had no one to cheer for. And you actually sensed that they weren't happy about it. They were still competing, which was great, but there was definitely a kind of a void there. And then on the staff, you had my head coach had to coach throws and jumps, which are completely different, and often different times. Like the throws are over here in a field because they can't throw the hammer throw sometimes in certain facilities. And so those are things that are maybe small and minor, but in track and field in particular are very noticeable when half the meet is not relevant to you, and the coaches are spread thin because they had the luxury of tapping into the full coaching staff. But when the program got cut, it cut their coaches too. And I thought that some of the women were affected negatively because the coach couldn't be 2 places at once. But that's something that it's not major, but it's worth pointing out where it affected the women on the team, not having feeling that they're half the team at a championship. But we still had a team, we still fought hard, we still trained, and we're still happy to have the opportunity. I was still grateful that I had the opportunity to coach them, but there was definitely something a little bit odd, in particular with track and field, that maybe the teams that got cut didn't have that layer to it.
This is actually, not to pick on And John, this is one of the stats, one of the unintended consequences of Title IX is that when Title IX was passed, 90% of coaches in women's sports were women. Now it's 38%. 70% of women's coaches in college athletics are men. And that's because the programs are equally funded. So the coaches' salaries are equally funded. So men started taking jobs because they could. Gino Auriemma can make $3 million, $5 million a year coaching UConn women's basketball. He doesn't have to enter the cutthroat world of men's basketball coaching. So that's one that's like a little bit messed up, and then not to pick on John because he's a male who coaches women, but that's one of the unintended consequences where men are like, oh, I can make the same coaching women's ice hockey as men's ice hockey, I'll coach the women. And then a woman doesn't get it. So.
And related to the equal pay, my sort of meta point about existing in this broader context of equal pay not being true between men and women in the C-suite at all, and particularly egregious for women of color in the C-suite. Say, this conversation has to be seen in the broader context of our struggles with equity when it comes to women, and particularly women of color.
But when you look at the statistics, they're awful when you then add the layer of racial inequity and women of color. I wanted to open it up to any questions because we have just a few minutes. If anybody has a question.
Great job to you guys. I wanted to see what basically Casey and Steve or John, what do you guys think about collegiate athletes getting paid, and how do you think that particular situation would impact Title IX?
It's pretty complex, right?
Yeah, because like I said earlier, there is no profit in college athletics. So the number of athletes, well, it's a valid point. As someone who works in college athletics, it's actually not a valid point. They're getting the average football, I want to say, all the numbers are getting mixed up in my head now, but the average football championship division school, they spend $50,000 per athlete a year. So in addition to a free education, that athlete's getting free training, free publicity, free coaching, free food, free housing, free gear. They're getting so much gear. I have gear that it's nuts how much gear I get, and I just work there. So I don't, as someone who works in it, the number of players who can back up that argument is very few. And there are few who are taking advantage of, yes, absolutely, at the highest level, there are kids who are making money for their school who deserve a cut of that. But then, no women's sports are making money. No other men's sports other than football are really making money. So how does that work? I think it takes it to a place with Title IX in particular where there's no way to do it fairly, absolutely no way to do it equitably. And they've been changing the rules so that now, we used to only be able to give them, for example, a bagel for breakfast. We could provide bagels for the team. We couldn't provide cream cheese. That was an extra benefit. I'm not joking. We couldn't provide cream cheese. We couldn't provide bagels. Now they're much more lax. We can provide them food. We can provide them whatever. But again, that's one of those things where it's the implementation of it in real life is not accurate. So when the kids are saying, I don't have money to eat, it's because they took their $500 meal stipend and bought shoes. I know that with our women's basketball team. I saw them this year. They were on campus over Christmas break. They got the $500 up front that's supposed to pay for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the week. And I watched them walk to Modell's to buy shoes with their money. So then, yes, they are complaining they have nothing to eat, but that's not because we didn't feed them. It's because they made poor choices. So it's a slippery slope is the moral of the story. And I don't want to deal with that. I don't think it's a valid argument yet. I think, are there players who that's a valid argument? Yes, there are absolute players, but it's 2% of the college athletics population, and to open that can of worms for the other 98% who are raking it in terms of benefits and a college education and all of that. Most kids are getting more out of the colleges than the colleges are getting out of them. So
there's also lots of money in college athletics. Not all that goes to the university, often goes to the networks or the ESPNs of the world. So, and it's one of these things, if it were to work, you probably would only be able to do it with the 6 or 7 programs that are actually making money. And then if you were to do that, it'd probably be more fair to divide that by all the student athletes, not just football. One little quick story, which kind of sometimes other sports suffer. There was talk that in the Big East Conference that was breaking up into different things, that the TCU would be in the Big East. So it means the tennis team and the golf team and the baseball team have to go to TCU to play their competitions. So the budget implications there, and to your point of missing class and being outside. So there's a lot of things that football and dictate that actually help certain student athletes, but oftentimes it also makes it tougher based on conferences that have nothing to do with the geographical location. It's more the major conferences that are dictating things, and that gets a little tricky too. So I agree that it's definitely tricky, and it's easy to say, oh yeah, I pay the athletes because I'm making all this money, but there's a couple asterisks and a couple fine print underneath that kind of tell a different story, or the truer story, which probably would, I think a lot of the athletes wouldn't, once they saw those in numbers, they might realize, well, maybe there's no money to give out because we're paying for the soccer team to go X, where, or paying for the academic advisor to do their services.
I was reading an article today about Title IX and this argument made by a sociologist who is out of University of Michigan, talking about a point of view about Title IX wherein it is basically the only law in the books that enforces like a separate but equal sort of mentality for any activity or behavior anymore, really. And I've been chewing this over, and I'm just interested in what you guys think about an argument that says that while, yes, obviously Title IX has these immense benefits of bringing women into sports and giving them educational opportunities as well, that should be overlooked, that there's this continuing legacy of like women are worse at sports, they're not as strong, they have their own sports now, but there's only so far that women can go. And I mean, when you began speaking, you were talking about like the way that it was, in the past where men were like, it was totally normalized that men's sports got all the money. And like, now I think if I'm a women's basketball player in college and I play for UConn, I could go to the WNBA and make $40,000. Like, the discrepancies continue, and it's totally normalized. And then you talk about the amount of media coverage that women get in very small proportion of men's media coverage. I'm just curious about if I said to you, like, Title IX creates its own ceiling of sorts for women where they get to play against other women, and isn't that nice? And like, how do we get beyond that, where there's like just athletes who are good at what they do, and they're encouraged from a young age to be a quarterback?
I mean, I just say two quick things on that. I think that, it's not a Title IX issue, it's not a sports issue. This is like our theme that you're hearing from me today. I played basketball. I couldn't play in college, even though it was my favorite sport. It wasn't the one that got me to Division I, but I love it. And if you go watch a WNBA game, it's a different game than the men's game. It's not, and it's. I don't think different worse, different, right? In some ways, I think it's better because there's more team ball that's played. They play hungrier. Free agency hasn't kicked in. You don't pay, I mean, there's a bunch of reasons that are unfair, right? But actually, it is a different game. I'm okay with that, right? But what I also hear in your question, and I don't think women will ever play basketball per se the way that men do, although there might be overlap, right? There's certain, and I'm not looking personally. that's not my end game. I'm not wanting to go to see women play like men. If they want to, right? Which is not what you're saying. Here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going with this. But I do want a world where they get paid as much as men, and when I don't have to hear the stupid riff on how women's basketball isn't as exciting. When I personally actually find men as a basketball fanatic, the NBA to be just absurd now because it's all about individual heroics and free agency is totally killed it. That's what I think. But like the problem is that all of this exists in this much broader context. 18% of the C-suite. 18%. It is 2017, y'all. Look at a picture of Congress, at heads of publishing companies, at heads of athletics. I mean, and those pictures are all men, mostly white, and that's where we are. This to me is a crisis, and of course that's going to seep into our consciousness, not just, so I don't think Title IX created that. I think Title IX created an opportunity for people like me to get to be among women who are like, I can bench press a house, and then bring that sense of like, you know, I can't anymore. But like, you know what I mean? We have to bring this to a broader conversation. Like, I just cannot believe, like if I'm sitting here 20 years from now, I will go down fighting saying like, let's at least double, like, can we to 32? We're 55% of the working age. And so there's a bigger fight, I think, around our value as leaders, as people, and so it plays out in sports. Of course, people think that women's basketball is worse just because it's different, right? And so to me, that's what we have to keep pushing, and we have to be, you know, unapologetic and unafraid. I'm over it. Like, I'm too old. 18%. Like, let's at least double that in the next 5 years. At 5 months. Who's with me?
Yeah.
I got just for a quick insertion here, I got a bit of a different perspective from other esteemed panelists. I was born in Russia, Soviet Union. I lived there until I was 16. So, whereas I didn't quite get, then I moved to South Carolina, went to college. I didn't quite get to the level when I was a professional athlete. There are no collegiate athletics in Russia. They used to still not any. So you kind of had to make that decision. Do I go to college or do I try to become a professional athlete? And then of course hockey was big, but in terms of the gap between professional team sports and Olympic sports, it was a lot closer in the Soviet Union than it is here. Olympics were huge; they were everything, and it was also because of the kind of universal lack of equal opportunity for women. The Communist Party actually leveraged sports as a propaganda machine, and it was easier to get up on the medal count in women's sports. So, if anything, it was women's sports were overfunded. The pharmaceutical research was overfunded, and the support of the women on individual level was as equal as it was for men. So all of the once you got to that, sort of Olympic trial type level, every athlete, male or female, was living off the same paltry $300 stipend a month. So everyone was, but everyone was equal, and that created an atmosphere where, whether that came first or the professional opportunities, but when I was growing up, all of the CFOs, most of the CFOs were female. Most doctors in the Soviet Union were female. And it was sort of a perpetual cycle of equality, both in sports and in professional life, that for all the shortcomings of the regime, and there was a very clear reasons that I left and moved to, arguably a better place than South Carolina. Arguably more advanced, right? For all of that, there were some aspects that gave me a really different perspective and a real appreciation for the equality between men and women, and then in track and field, and I think it would be safe to assume everybody here has some sort of connection to running track and field. Even here in the States, I can't think of a more egalitarian group of people than USA Track and Field. When I think of equality between men and women, I've traveled with those guys, so both among the athletes and among the executive suite. The chairman is female, the CEO is female, the chief, Jill here, what's her title? She's like the chief. No, it's something more like, that's why I asked. It's like she's like the chief strategy officer. Anyway, she's somebody I've known since the Atlanta Olympics. She's a strong former Arkansas runner who made the most of her athletic and professional opportunities. When I think of Natasha and her crew down in Austin, when they post their pictures on Instagram, it's a group of runners. It's just, same as all the crews running around New York City. It's just a group of people working together toward a common goal. So, and then looking back at the statistics, with the 45, 47% Casey, correct me. 45%. It's been a few minutes. Women percentage of female athletes in the NCAA.
48.
Right. So we're still underrepresented. When you stack that against the 19% of the C-suite, there's a really positive element to what we've been talking about here tonight. We, especially in the Olympic sports, vis-a-vis the team sports, it's a field of as close to equal opportunity as you get in the United States in any setting. And we, being part of that, we can really lead the way.
And I'm sorry, one quick, just to speak to what you said about professional athletics. I don't look at that, because this is my favorite stat to tell my student college athletes go on to play professional sports. So that's none of the ones that I do. Like, you're not playing pro. Like, it's just not, that percentage is tiny. And Title IX also doesn't apply to the NBA. It only applies to institutions receiving federal funding. So, using that law and those statistics, this is their pro sports. It's not a self-imposed ceiling, but there's a ceiling there that's there for reasons other than the fact that they're female. You know what I mean? So, to me, I'm focusing on what I can do and what I can work with, and that's the inequality that's there. Now, like, beyond that kind of gets to be an enormous societal thing that I can't. So.
Well, I want to pause the panel because we have to get out of here, but I want to thank everybody for being really open and honest and sharing their stories. I think where we got to at the end is exactly what this is about, that sports exist in society, right? So the two aren't separate, and everything with Title IX, all the laws are very much a reflection of where we're at, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction. So thank you guys. Let's keep talking, let's keep tweeting. We were using the hashtag #MyTitle9Story, and talk to people on the side. Thank you guys.